Glass shattered downstairs, followed by a muffled curse that made my blood run cold. I knew that voice. The same voice that had criticized my wedding dress, my choice of career, and most recently, my parenting skills. I gripped the baseball bat from behind our bedroom door, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. Charlie slept peacefully in his room, unaware that his grandmother had just broken into our house at 3 in the morning. The kitchen lights blazed as I crept down the stairs. Dolly Monroe stood amid a sea of scattered luggage, holding a broken flower vase like it personally offended her. Her silver-streaked hair was perfectly coiffed despite the ungodly hour. Really, Penelope? These hideous flowers by the door? I told Mark you have no sense of style. She dropped the broken pieces into the trash without a hint of remorse. Where's my son? What are you doing in my house, Dolly? Don't be dramatic. I'm moving in. She wheeled another suitcase through the doorway. Marcus knows all about it. My fingers tightened around the bat. Mark knows nothing about this. Oh, but he does. She pulled out her phone, showing me a text conversation. He agreed weeks ago. Didn't he tell you? My husband's messages glowed on the screen. Of course you can stay, Mom. As long as you need. Dated 3 weeks ago. The bat lowered to my side as reality sank in. My own husband had betrayed me, invited his mother into our sanctuary without a single word to me. Now, be a dear and help me with these bags. Dolly gestured to the pile of expensive luggage cluttering my entryway. The guest room needs a thorough cleaning, by the way. I noticed cobwebs last time I visited. There is no guest room anymore. It's Charlie's playroom. Her face hardened. Well, that won't do at all. We'll move his things tomorrow. Children don't need that much space anyway. You're not touching my son's room. Don't be difficult, Penelope. I raised Marcus just fine without all these modern parenting notions. She began dragging a suitcase toward the stairs. Speaking of which, I've noticed Charlie seems quite attached to you. Not healthy at his age. My chest tightened. He's 2. Precisely. Marcus was much more independent at that age. But we'll work on that. Footsteps creaked overhead, Mark, finally awakening to the chaos below. I watched him descend, his face shifting from confusion to recognition to guilt. Mom? What are you doing here now? I thought you weren't coming until next month. Plans changed, darling. She kissed his cheek, shooting me a triumphant look. The house sold faster than expected. But you said any time was fine, remember? Mark's eyes met mine, pleading for understanding. Penny, I meant to tell you. When? The word came out sharp enough to make him flinch. When exactly were you planning to tell me your mother was moving in? Don't be angry with him, Dolly interjected. He's such a good son, taking care of his mother in her time of need. A cry echoed from upstairs, Charlie, awakened by the commotion. Before I could move, Dolly was already heading toward the stairs. I'll get him. Poor dear needs his grandmother's touch. Don't you dare. My voice was barely a whisper, but it stopped her mid-step. Touch my son, and I swear. Penny! Mark's shock at my tone only fueled my rage. No. I moved between Dolly and the stairs. This is my house. My son. You don't get to waltz in here and take over. Dolly's smile never wavered. Oh, sweetheart. I already have. Charlie's cries grew louder, and I faced a choice: deal with my mother-in-law or comfort my son. As I turned to climb the stairs, I caught her satisfied smirk. This was just the beginning. She thought she'd won, but she had no idea what I was capable of. Not yet. 3 days into Dolly's invasion, I found her rearranging my kitchen cabinets. My grandmother's china set, the only thing I had left of her, sat in a cardboard box marked donate. These old dishes were taking up so much space, she said, not bothering to look at me. And really, Penelope, organizing by color instead of function? No wonder Marcus always complained about never finding anything. I clutched the box to my chest. Mark never complained about the kitchen. Oh, he wouldn't, to you. She slid another stack of plates into a new spot. He's too kind. But a mother knows when her son is unhappy. The sound of Charlie's laughter drifted in from the living room, where Mark was supposedly watching him. Instead, I found my 2-year-old covered in chocolate, drawing on the walls with sticky fingers while Mark dozed on the couch. I gave him a little treat, Dolly called from the kitchen. Poor thing never gets sweets. All that organic nonsense you insist on. I grabbed the wet wipes, kneeling beside Charlie. Hey, baby. Let's get you cleaned up. No. He squirmed away, leaving chocolate handprints on my shirt. Gamma said play. The word stabbed through me. 3 days, and she'd already trained him to call her that. Mark. I nudged his foot. Wake up. Your son is destroying our walls. He stirred, blinking at the mess. Oh, shit, shoot. Sorry, I dozed off. While your mother fed him sugar and let him vandalize the house. Come on, Penny. It's not vandalism. He's just being a kid. A kid who's going to be impossible to put down for his nap now. Dolly appeared in the doorway. Naps are another modern obsession. Marcus never needed them past age 2. Well, Charlie does. I lifted my squirming son. And he needs structure, not sugar and chaos. Structure? She laughed. Is that what you call your rigid little schedules? Children need freedom to explore. Mom, Mark started, but she waved him off. I'm only trying to help. Heaven knows you both need it, working such long hours. Which reminds me, I've been thinking about the guest room situation. There is no situation, I said. You're not taking Charlie's playroom. Actually, Mark cleared his throat. Maybe we should consider it. Just temporarily. Mom needs her own space, and Charlie has plenty of room in his bedroom for toys. The betrayal burned worse than the first night. You're taking her side? I'm not taking sides. I'm trying to be practical. Practical would have been discussing this with your wife before inviting your mother to live with us. Dolly touched Mark's arm. Don't let her make you feel guilty, darling. You're being a good son. A good son? I laughed. What about being a good husband? A good father? Penny. No. I'm done. I headed for the stairs with Charlie. Clean up this mess. Both of you. You see how she speaks to you? Dolly's voice carried up the stairs. So disrespectful. Your father would never have tolerated. Don't. Mark's sharp tone surprised me. Don't bring Dad into this. I paused on the landing, holding Charlie closer. I'm only saying what he would have said, Dolly continued, her voice softening. He always worried about you, you know. Worried you'd let someone control you. The silence that followed felt heavy with unspoken words. Then Mark sighed, that same defeated sound I'd heard too often lately. I'll clean up the walls, he said. And maybe we can look at reorganizing the upstairs this weekend. I carried Charlie to his room, my mind racing. Dolly wasn't just trying to take over my house, she was rewriting history, manipulating Mark's memories of his own father. But she'd made a mistake, revealing that particular weapon. Because I remembered Mark's father differently. Remembered the letters he'd written Mark before he died, warning him about Dolly's manipulations. Letters that Mark had never seen, because his mother had intercepted them. Letters I'd found in our attic last year, hidden in an old box of Mark's childhood things. I kissed Charlie's chocolate-stained cheek. Time to clean up, baby. Mommy has some planning to do. The letters felt heavy in my hands as I sat in Lisa's kitchen, away from Dolly's prying eyes. My neighbor poured more wine, waiting for me to speak. She's playing sick now, I said. Clutching her chest, taking these mysterious pills. Mark's completely falling for it. Classic manipulation. Lisa leaned forward. What's in the letters? Everything. His father knew what she was doing, tried to warn Mark before he died. I spread the yellowed pages across her counter. He wrote about how she isolated them, controlled everything through guilt and fake emergencies. A text lit up my phone, Mark asking where I was. I ignored it. You have to show him, Lisa said. I tried. This morning, I mentioned his father's concerns about Dolly. He shut down completely, said I was being cruel bringing up painful memories. While she gets to weaponize those same memories? My phone buzzed again. This time it was Dolly. Marcus is worried sick. I'm not feeling well, and Charlie keeps asking for his mother. She's good, I muttered, showing Lisa the text. Really good. You need to get back, don't you? I nodded, gathering the letters. Thanks for the wine. And the sanctuary. The house was quiet when I returned, too quiet. I found Mark in the kitchen, his face grave. Where were you? He asked. At Lisa's. I needed a break. While Mom was having chest pains? My stomach clenched. What? She could barely breathe, Penny. Charlie was crying, and you weren't here. I was gone for 2 hours. The doctor's coming tomorrow. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom thinks the stress is making her condition worse. What condition? She's never mentioned any condition before. Because you never bothered to ask. His outburst startled us both. You've been hostile since she arrived. Maybe if you tried to understand. Understand what? How she's systematically taking over our home. Undermining every decision I make about Charlie? She's trying to help. No, she's manipulating you. Just like she always has. His face hardened. You don't know anything about my mother. I know your father tried to warn you about her. Don't. He wrote you letters, Mark. Letters she hid from you. Stop it. He turned away. I'm not having this conversation. From upstairs, Dolly's voice carried down, Marcus? I'm feeling quite faint. He rushed past me without another word. I followed, reaching the top of the stairs in time to see Dolly swooning dramatically on the landing, one hand pressed to her heart. Maybe we should go to the hospital, Mark suggested, supporting her. No, no. She patted his arm weakly. I just need rest. And perhaps if things were calmer here. Her eyes met mine, triumphant despite her performance. I'll make you some tea, Mark said. Such a good son. She smiled. Oh, and Penelope? Charlie's toys are everywhere in that playroom. I nearly tripped. We really must do something about that space. I watched them disappear into her temporary room, the room she was systematically turning permanent. Through the partially open door, I heard her murmuring to Mark. I hate to say it, darling, but I'm worried about Penelope. These accusations, the hostility. It reminds me of your father's sister. You remember what happened to her? Mom, please. I just don't want history repeating itself. Especially with Charlie so young. I backed away, my hands shaking. She wasn't just trying to take my home or undermine my marriage. She was laying groundwork, planting seeds of doubt about my stability, my fitness as a mother. In Charlie's room, I found him sleeping peacefully, clutching the stuffed elephant I'd given him. Dolly had tried to replace it with a new toy, but he'd refused. My small victory. I touched his soft cheek, making a decision. The letters weren't enough. I needed more, concrete evidence of her manipulation, her lies. And I needed to move fast, before she convinced Mark I was the threat to our family's stability. Sweet dreams, baby, I whispered. Mommy's going to fix this. Whatever it takes. I found the papers in Dolly's purse while searching for her supposed heart medication. Instead of prescription bottles, I discovered legal documents, a deed transfer form for our house. Already filled out with Mark's signature line highlighted in yellow. My hands trembled as I photographed each page with my phone. Through the bedroom window, I could see Dolly in the garden with Charlie, teaching him to pull up my carefully planted herbs. Weeds, she'd called them yesterday. This garden needs a proper English layout. The front door opened downstairs. Mark, home early. I slipped the papers back into her purse, exactly as I'd found them. Mom? His voice carried upstairs. Penny? I met him in the kitchen, where he was frowning at a stack of mail. Why is there a letter from the bank about refinancing? He asked. What? He held up the envelope. Did you apply for a loan without telling me? I've never, the realization hit like ice water. Show me that. The application was in both our names, with forged signatures and inflated income statements. My stomach lurched when I saw the requested amount, enough to buy out my share of the house, if someone were planning to force a sale. Mark, I didn't do this. Then who did? His voice had that edge now, the one that appeared whenever he thought I was attacking his mother. Because it wasn't me, and Mom's been too sick to. Sick? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my ears. Go check her purse. See how many heart medications you find. Stop it. Just stop. He rubbed his temples. First the accusations about Dad's letters, now this? What's next? Are you going to claim she's trying to steal the house too? The irony burned. Actually. Marcus? Dolly appeared in the doorway, supporting herself on the frame. Charlie clung to her leg, dirt smeared across his cheeks. I heard raised voices. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, Mom. Just discussing some paperwork. Her eyes flickered to the loan application, then to me. A slight smile touched her lips. Gamma stay forever? Charlie asked, and something in me snapped. I grabbed my phone, pulling up the photos. Look at these, Mark. Really look. What are you? Your mother's been planning this from the start. The deed transfer, the loan application, she's trying to take our home. Dolly swayed dramatically. Oh, Marcus, she's doing it again. Just like this morning, making these wild accusations. I have proof this time. I thrust the phone at Mark. She's not sick. She's not helpless. She's... Enough. Mark's shout made Charlie jump. I can't take any more of this paranoia. Mom's right, you need help. Help? The word felt like ash in my mouth. I've been reading about postpartum psychosis, Dolly said softly. It can appear months or even years after. Don't you dare. I stepped toward her, but Mark moved between us. Penny, you're scaring Charlie. Our son was crying now, still clutching Dolly's leg. She stroked his hair with practiced concern. Perhaps I should take him upstairs, she suggested. While you two talk? No. I moved to grab Charlie, but Mark caught my arm. Let her take him, he said. You're not thinking clearly. I watched helplessly as Dolly led my son away, her limp magically more pronounced. The moment they disappeared upstairs, I wrenched free from Mark's grip. She's going to take everything, I whispered. And you're helping her do it. I'm trying to help you. He reached for me again, but I backed away. We can find someone for you to talk to, get you the support you need. Support? I grabbed my keys from the counter. I'll show you exactly what kind of support I need. Where are you going? To get my son back. I headed for the stairs. And if you try to stop me, I swear I'll. You'll what? His voice was cold now. Prove everything Mom's been saying about your stability? I froze, understanding finally hitting me. This was her masterpiece, turning my own husband against me, making my desperate attempts to protect our family look like madness. You're right, I said quietly. I need some air. Just a walk to clear my head. He relaxed slightly, believing he'd won. But as I walked out the door, I wasn't heading for a casual stroll. I was going to war. Lisa's laptop glowed in the darkness of her kitchen as we scrolled through years of Dolly's social media history. Empty wine glasses and scattered papers surrounded us, bank statements, property records, old newspaper clippings. There, Lisa pointed. 3 other houses in 5 years. All belonging to widowers or divorced men with children. And she lived in each one until the families fell apart. Lisa clicked through the photos. She's done this before, Penny. Multiple times. My phone buzzed, another message from Mark, come home. We can talk about this. And then, Mom's worried about your state of mind. He's already talking about psychiatric evaluations, I said. Dolly's convinced him I'm having some kind of breakdown. Then we need proof she's done this before. Lisa opened another tab. Look, this woman posted warnings about her years ago. Caroline Bennett. Her father almost lost everything. A sharp knock at Lisa's front door made us both jump. Through the window, I saw Mark's silhouette. Hide this, I whispered, helping Lisa clear the evidence. He can't know what we found. Mark's face was tight with concern when Lisa let him in. Charlie's been crying for you. I needed space to think. About what? Running away? Taking our son? He stepped closer. Mom found the packed bag in your closet. The bag I'd never packed. The trap I should have seen coming. Mark. She's right, isn't she? You're not well. Your mother is a predator. The words burst out before I could stop them. She's done this before, to other families. I can prove it. More conspiracy theories? He shook his head. This is exactly what she warned me about. asked Caroline Bennett. I grabbed my phone, pulling up the social media post. Or David Thompson's family. Or. Stop. He held up his hand. Just stop. Come home. We'll get you help. I'm not crazy. Then why are you acting like this? Searching through Mom's things, making wild accusations, planning to kidnap our son? I never. The bag, Penny. Packed with Charlie's clothes and your passport. Lisa stepped between us. Mark, maybe you should listen. Stay out of this. His voice hardened. You're only encouraging her paranoia. My phone chimed again. A message from an unknown number. This is Caroline Bennett. Lisa reached out. We need to talk about Dolores Monroe. Hope flared, but I kept my expression neutral. Fine, I said. You're right. I need to come home. Mark's relief was painful to watch. Thank you. Mom suggested we talk to Dr. Phillips tomorrow. Whatever you think is best. I touched his arm, feeling him relax further. I just need to use the bathroom first. In Lisa's bathroom, I quickly typed a response to Caroline, tell me everything. Recording all conversations from now on. Then I deleted the messages and turned on my phone's voice recorder. If Dolly wanted to play games with reality, I'd give her exactly what she wanted, a seemingly unstable daughter-in-law. Slowly surrendering to her manipulation. Let her think she'd won. Let her get comfortable. Let her slip up and reveal her true self, just like she had with the others. When I emerged, Mark was waiting by the door. Ready? Yes. I smiled weakly. I'm sorry for worrying you. In the car, he reached for my hand. It's going to be okay. Mom knows a great therapist. Of course she does. I squeezed his hand, picturing Caroline Bennett's message. Your mother knows exactly what I need. At home, Dolly waited in the living room, Charlie asleep in her lap. Her expression was perfect, concerned, loving, victorious. Oh, sweetheart, she said. We've been so worried. I let my shoulders slump in defeat. I know. I'm sorry. She patted the couch beside her. Sit. Tell me what's troubling you. As I sat down, my phone silently recording in my pocket, I thought about all the other families she'd destroyed. All the other lives she'd invaded and dismantled. You're right, I whispered. I need help. Her smile widened, and in that moment, I saw what Caroline Bennett must have seen, the predator beneath the mask, already savoring her victory. But this time would be different. This time, her prey was hunting back. Caroline Bennett's testimony played through my phone's speaker, her voice trembling even years later. She destroyed my family. Made my father think I was unstable, dangerous. By the time we realized what she'd done, she already had control of everything. I watched Mark's face as he listened, searching for any sign of recognition. We sat in our kitchen at midnight, Charlie safely asleep upstairs. While Dolly attended her doctor's appointment, really a meeting with her lawyer about the house deed. There are others, I said softly. David Thompson's family. The Hendersons. All the same pattern. Mark stared at his hands. This could be anyone. Some angry ex-daughter-in-law making accusations. Check the dates. The properties. It all matches. You've been investigating my mother? His voice hardened. Working with these strangers to build some case against her? To protect our family. From what? She's helped us. Taken care of Charlie, supported us. Supported us? I played another recording, Dolly on the phone with her lawyer yesterday. Once the deed transfer is complete, we can discuss options for removing her from the property. Marcus will understand eventually. He always does what's best for family. The kitchen door creaked. We both turned to find Dolly standing there, her face a perfect mask of hurt betrayal. "Oh, Marcus," she whispered. "What has she done to you?" "Done to him?" I stood, finally ready for this confrontation. "Tell him about the others, Dolly. Tell him what happened to their families." "Others?" She moved to Mark's side, touching his shoulder. "Darling, this is worse than I feared. She's created an entire conspiracy." "Stop lying." I thrust my phone forward, playing Caroline's testimony again. "Your name is on all the property records. The dates, the pattern. Anyone could fake those recordings." Dolly's voice cracked perfectly. "I knew you were troubled, but this elaborate plot to turn my son against me." "Plot?" I laughed. "Like the planted bag in my closet? The forged loan documents?" "What documents?" Mark asked. "The ones that disappeared from her purse after I photographed them." I reached for my phone again, but the screen was black. Dead battery. "No, no, no." "Sweetheart," Dolly said to Mark, "remember what Dr. Phillips said about paranoid delusions? The elaborate stories they create?" "I'm not," I stopped, seeing Mark's expression. "You've already been talking to doctors about me?" "We had to," he said. "Mom's been worried." "Of course she has." I backed away from them both. "She's been planning this from the start." "Planning what?" Dolly's voice rose. "To help you? To support this family while you spiral further into these dangerous fantasies?" "Mark, please." I grabbed his arm. "Call Caroline Bennett. Talk to the others. Just investigate." He pulled away. "I did investigate. That number you gave me? It's disconnected. The property records? Mom never owned those houses. I checked everything, Penny. There's nothing there. The room spun. That's not possible. Lisa saw." "Lisa enabled you," Dolly said gently. "Fed into your paranoia. That's why we asked her to keep her distance." "Asked her?" Ice filled my veins. "What did you do?" "We filed a restraining order," Mark said. "For your own good." She was making everything worse. I ran to the window. Lisa's house was dark, empty. "Where is she?" "Visiting family," Dolly said. "She understood it was best to give you space to heal." My last ally, gone. My evidence, erased. Even the photos on my phone, I checked again, hands shaking, deleted during the battery death. "I've arranged everything," Dolly continued. "The facility has an excellent reputation. Very discreet." "Facility?" The word barely came out. "Just for a few weeks," Mark said. "Until you're better." I looked between them, my husband's pained expression, Dolly's perfectly constructed concern, and understood. This was her masterpiece. Every move calculated, every piece positioned. While I thought I was gathering evidence, she was building her case. Every reaction she'd provoked, every paranoid accusation she'd engineered, had led to this moment. "Charlie needs his mother healthy," Dolly said, reaching for my arm. "Come with us. Let us help you." I jerked away, but Mark blocked the doorway. Through the window, I saw headlights approaching. The intervention team Dolly had undoubtedly already arranged. My son slept upstairs, unaware his mother was about to disappear. Just like Caroline Bennett's family. Just like all the others. Game over. Dolly had won. Or had she? The intervention team never made it through the door. Instead, they found Caroline Bennett herself standing on our porch, flanked by 2 police officers and a silver-haired man I'd never seen before. "Hello, Dolly," the man said. "Remember me? James Thompson. David's brother." Dolly's mask slipped for just a second. "Marcus, call security." "Security?" Caroline stepped forward. "Like the private security firm you hired to intimidate me? The one that's now under investigation?" Mark looked between them, confusion breaking through his certainty. "Mom?" "Don't listen to them," Dolly grabbed his arm. "They're working with Penelope, trying to destroy our family." "Like you destroyed mine?" James Thompson pulled out a folder. "We have the proof now. All of it. The forged documents, the manipulated bank records, the falsified medical reports. And the recordings," I added quietly. "The ones you thought you deleted from my phone?" Lisa uploaded everything to a secure server before she went away. Dolly's composure cracked. "You ungrateful little." "Choose your next words carefully," one officer warned. "We have questions about several suspicious property transfers in 3 states. Mark backed away from his mother, realization dawning. "The houses. The other families. It's all true?" "Of course not." But Dolly's denial sounded hollow now. "Marcus, darling, they're trying to turn you against me. Just like your father." "My father?" Mark's voice hardened. "Tell me about the letters, Mom. The ones he wrote before he died." "What letters?" I pulled them from my jacket, the originals this time, not copies. "The ones where he warned Mark about you. About your patterns. The ones you intercepted and hid. You went through my things?" Real fear crept into her voice. "No," Mark said. "I did. Last night, while you were meeting your lawyer. Found them exactly where Penny said they'd be." Dolly lunged for the letters, but Mark pulled them away. "Don't bother. I've read them all. Every warning, every detail about what you did to our family. I protected you." She was unraveling now, her careful facade crumbling. "Your father was weak, just like you're being weak now. Everything I did was for your own good. By destroying everyone I love? By trying to commit my wife? She was ruining everything. Just like your father, just like all of them, trying to take you away from me." The officers moved forward, but Dolly wasn't finished. She turned to me, eyes wild. "You think you've won? You think this changes anything?" She laughed, the sound brittle. "He'll always choose me. They always do. Because I'm the only one who truly loves them, who understands what's best." "No, Mom." Mark's voice was quiet but firm. "Not anymore." She froze. "Marcus?" "Officers," he said, "I'd like to press charges. For fraud, for the forged documents in my name. For all of it." "You can't," she whispered. "I'm your mother." "Yes. You are. That's what makes this necessary." As the officers led her away, her mask finally shattered completely. She screamed accusations, threats, promises of revenge. But Mark didn't waver. Charlie's cry echoed from upstairs, awakened by the chaos. Mark started to go, but I caught his arm. Wait. I met his eyes. Are you sure? About all of this? He looked at the letters in his hand, then at Dolly being placed in the police car. I should have seen it sooner. Should have believed you. You saw what she wanted you to see. We all did. He touched my cheek, grief and determination warring in his expression. I have to go with them. Make a statement, start making this right. Will you still be here when I get back? Charlie cried out again, and this time I let go of Mark's arm. We'll be here. But Mark? Things can't just go back to normal. I know. He stepped back. I have to prove myself again. To both of you. I watched him walk away, then climbed the stairs to our son. Through the window, I could see Dolly in the police car, her face a mask of fury and fear. She'd lost everything she tried to steal, her son, her control, her carefully constructed reality. But as I held Charlie, I wondered about the cost of victory and whether any of us would ever truly recover from the wounds she'd left behind. Spring bloomed in my restored garden, the herbs Dolly had ripped out now thriving again. Charlie chased butterflies through the new growth while I pulled weeds, each one a reminder of how quickly unwanted things could take root. The doorbell rang. Lisa stood on the porch with a folder of newspaper clippings. They denied her appeal. She'll serve the full sentence. Good. I brushed dirt from my hands. The others? Caroline Bennett got her father's house back. The Thompsons recovered most of their assets. She hesitated. Mark called me again. Charlie's laughter floated across the yard as he discovered a ladybug. I focused on that sound, not the ache that still accompanied his father's name. He's in therapy, Lisa continued. Real therapy, not the kind Dolly arranged. He wants to know if you'll consider. I can't. The words came easier now. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He's changed. He had to hit rock bottom to see the truth. To choose truth. I watched Charlie playing. I won't risk Charlie going through that again. Lisa nodded, understanding. We'd had this conversation before, would probably have it again. Some wounds needed more than apologies to heal. Inside, I made coffee while Lisa spread out the clippings. Other cases, other families torn apart by Dolly's manipulations. Some had recovered. Others remained fractured, trust too damaged to rebuild. You know what's strange? I touched a photo of Dolly being led from the courthouse. I almost understand her now. The fear of losing control, of being alone. The things it drove her to do. But you're not her. No. I smiled as Charlie ran past the window. I chose to fight for love, not control. The mail arrived, bills, advertisements, and a thick envelope from Mark's lawyer. Inside was a deed transfer, returning full ownership of the house to me. And beneath it, a letter. You don't have to read it, Lisa said. But I did, scanning words of remorse, of understanding, of hope. The final lines caught me. I'm learning to recognize manipulation, to stand against it. Like you did. Like you taught me to do. Charlie deserves that strength in both his parents, whether we're together or apart. A cry from outside, Charlie had fallen. I rushed out, but he was already picking himself up, brushing off his knees. Okay, Mommy, he declared. I strong. Yes, you are, baby. I hugged him close, breathing in his sweet, solid presence. We both are. Later, after Lisa left and Charlie was asleep, I sat in my garden. The motion sensor light flickered on, illuminating the space where Dolly had once held court, plotting to steal everything I loved. Now only peaceful shadows remained. My phone buzzed, a text from Caroline Bennett, support group meeting tomorrow. Other survivors want to meet you. I thought about Dolly in her prison cell, probably already finding new ways to manipulate those around her. About Mark, finally facing his own wounds and weaknesses. About Charlie, growing up knowing the difference between love and control. The garden needed more work. Some plants were still struggling, others showing surprising resilience. Like family. Like healing. Like truth. I texted back, I'll be there. Then I pulled one last weed, its roots deep but not unbreakable. Above me, stars pierced the darkness, countless points of light, each one a reminder that even the darkest nights eventually yield to dawn. Charlie's nightlight glowed in his window, a beacon calling me back inside. To him. To our home. To the life we were rebuilding, stronger now for having been tested. Not all victories look like we expect. Sometimes they're found in small moments, a child's laughter, a garden's renewal, the quiet strength of choosing your own path. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in destroying your enemy, but in refusing to become them. I stood, brushing earth from my knees, and went to check on my son. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own choices. But tonight, in this moment, we were safe. We were free. And that was enough.
Mom, Dad. I need to tell you something. I'm paralyzed from the waist down. I don't want to burden Kristen with caregiving, so I'm thinking of getting a divorce. I'm truly sorry. When the in-laws and I visited, Tyler revealed this with a despairing expression. Having met with a traffic accident while on a business trip. Hearing the heartbreaking news, his parents collapsed to their knees, lamenting their son's misfortune but quickly stood up again. Don't worry, Tyler. We are here for you. Kristen will support you too. The parents turned and looked at me, their eyes conveying a message of mutual support. Soon after, my unexpected response left them speechless. No, I'm actually single now. Tyler said he doesn't want to burden me with caregiving, but I never intended to do it. Not at all. My emotionally flat words seemed out of place, and at that moment, a sharp slap hit my left cheek. Not now, Kristen. Don't joke when your husband will never walk again. How can you say something so cold without batting an eye? Calm down, honey. Violence is not the answer. And remember, the next room might hear us, though I share your feelings. Kristen. It seems like you don't care at all. Isn't this the time for family to support each other? Supporting each other as a family. How wonderful that would have been. But my husband and his parents knew nothing, whereas I knew everything. Still expressionless, I was filled with anger inside. The in-laws glared at me, waiting for what I would say next. Being slapped by the mother-in-law was unexpected. But if they knew nothing of our circumstances, their reaction might seem normal. However, I had resolved to tell the truth. I took a deep breath and began to talk about everything that had happened. Let me explain everything, one by one. Could you please look at this? I pulled out a piece of paper I had prepared and showed it to the in-laws. The mother-in-law took it with a puzzled look. Is this a medical report? Indeed, it was a medical report from the time I had been to the hospital, just as she had said. Upon reviewing its contents, they showed expressions of shock. Did you hurt your head? How? What happened exactly? And it wasn't even that long ago. This is from when Tyler hit me, and I hit my head on a desk, requiring surgery. The moment I revealed this, both of them gasped in shock. He hit you? Tyler hit you? What in the world happened? Meanwhile, Tyler couldn't hide his disturbance from my revelations, his eyes darting around. Wait. Kristen, what are you talking about? Tyler tried to speak as if he knew nothing. But I ignored him and began to reveal the mistreatment I had endured from him. What I'm about to say may be hard for you to believe. Because Tyler always acted like a good husband in front of you. I'm not acting. Why would you say that, Kristen? We thought Tyler was a good husband. Was he different with you? Yes, he was. In the beginning, he eagerly did housework and was a very kind husband. But about a year after we married, he started ignoring me and verbally abusing me, and it hasn't stopped. As I explained without changing my expression, my husband denied the mistreatment. What are you talking about? When did I ever mistreat you? Tyler mistreating you? I can't believe it. It can't be Tyler. The in-laws were visibly distressed and confused. No wonder. They had always seen his good husband act, which was flawless. Furthermore, I heard that Tyler was straightforward and kind from his childhood. And he never went through a rebellious phase. So, even I hadn't expected them to believe what I said without evidence. Then I made my next move, pulling out a small device from my bag and asking the in-laws. Do you know what this is? Some kind of small device. I've never seen this. What is it? They were puzzled and questioned me further. Then I asked Tyler. Do you know what this is, Tyler? Could it be? He might have realized what it was, and I revealed the device's true nature. As Tyler seems to realize, this is a surveillance camera. Amazing, isn't it? Nowadays, you can get such high-quality, tiny devices easily. Seeing Tyler's panicked expression, I didn't miss it. He must have underestimated me, thinking I couldn't do anything significant. As I stared at him, he met my gaze. The fear was contained in his gaze, unlike when he was mistreating me. To further drive the point home, I pulled out a tablet and started playing a video. Let's watch this, shall we? Wait. What are you planning to do? Tyler's face turned visibly pale, realizing what I had recorded. Indeed, the video showed numerous instances of him mistreating me. And the playback now captured the decisive moment when he raised his hand against me. Don't laugh without my permission. If you laugh in front of me again, it won't end just like this. Understood. With a loud smack and his angry voice echoing. The video showed me collapsing from the pain and fear of being hit in the face. I then hit my head on the corner of the desk, bleeding from the wound. But Tyler didn't care, he slammed the door loudly and left the room. Shocked by the disturbing footage, the in-laws' faces turned pale. It's understandable. They had believed their son was a good husband. Yet what unfolded before them was unimaginable. The grotesqueness of the video was enough to make one nauseous. Possibly wounding the in-laws' hearts deeply. This can't be true. Tyler, what have you done? Even when I was injured, Tyler did nothing for me. So I had to apply first aid myself and go to a hospital that was open at night all by myself. The in-laws looked at my husband with disbelief. Tyler, avoiding eye contact, remained silent uncomfortably. Since the mistreatment began, Tyler would get angry whenever I showed any emotion, whether laughing or crying. Just on that day, he saw me laughing unconsciously at a message from a friend and hit me. He had often told me not to laugh without his permission. Whenever I laugh even a little, Tyler gets upset and hits me or lashes out at objects. This isn't the only instance of his mistreatment I've recorded. If you still can't trust this, I can show you more. No, I believe it. That's definitely Tyler. They were in disbelief that their son could treat his wife so cruelly. Both remained silent, their faces pale. I continued to explain the facts without changing my expression. There's no escaping it, right? It's all perfectly captured on video. If it weren't for this, you would have made excuses. That's why I set up the surveillance camera. This video, along with the diagnosis I showed earlier, serves as sufficient evidence of the mistreatment I endured. Recording without permission. What are you trying to achieve by doing this? Isn't it obvious? I want your parents to see the true nature you've been desperately hiding. Finally, Tyler began to show his true nature in front of his parents, but there was more to reveal. There are more videos I'd like you to see. Could we watch the next one? What's next? I then played another video. It showed Tyler in his office, seemingly doing some paperwork. No way. He realized it showed him signing a divorce petition. After finishing, he stored it on a shelf next to his desk. As you can see, Tyler had prepared a divorce petition himself. And what I did with it, you probably can guess. Indeed, I had secretly taken the divorce petition while he was away on his business trip and filed it at the law office. The divorce petition has been officially accepted. So, I am already single. I reaffirmed the facts to the in-laws. It seemed they now understood that I had been expressionless all this time due to the mistreatment. The mother-in-law put her hand on my back and said, "I can't believe this. So that's why you always looked so expressionless, Kristen. I'm sorry we didn't realize." The in-laws are kind people. Now that they knew the truth, tears welled up in their eyes. They then turned to Tyler and sternly asked him to explain himself. They seemed to fully believe my story now. "Tyler, what have you been doing to Kristen? I didn't raise you to be such a person. What's going on with you as an adult? Explain yourself properly." Realizing he couldn't dodge the situation, Tyler began to speak, his voice breaking. "Actually, I've been harassed by my boss and colleagues at work. It's been hard to even go to work every day, but I can't quit my job. I couldn't talk to anyone about it." Harassment? The anger on her face softened slightly, perhaps as a mother concerned about her son. He continued to speak. "The business trip was actually meant for a colleague, but it was pushed onto me. I've also been blamed for mistakes at work that weren't my fault. And others have stolen credit for my accomplishments. I can't get their laughing at me out of my head. So that's why you told Kristen not to laugh." She seemed pained by her son's account. Her previously angry face turned into one of concern. Tyler, with tears streaming down his face, continued. "I had no escape, so I created one by mistreating Kristen at home. I've been terrible to her. I'm sorry. I was out of line. I truly apologize." Tyler repeatedly apologized on the bed, showing his remorse. I was a bit worried that his apology might sway his parents' feelings. But that was just my needless worry. I understand your point, but that confirms the mistreatment, right? Shameful. A grown man shouldn't take out his stress on his wife. Apologize to Kristen sincerely. When they heard from his own mouth that the mistreatment was a fact, they exploded more angry than before. Tyler had perhaps hoped to divert the anger of his parents towards something other than himself by garnering their sympathy. However, he likely hadn't anticipated that this would backfire. No matter the reasons Tyler had, they didn't justify his mistreatment of his wife. Although the in-laws didn't vocalize it, they surely thought as much. Caught off guard by their continued anger, Tyler hastily apologized to them as well. Dad, Mom, I'm sorry for letting you down. Kristen, I really am sorry. I'll make sure to pay the alimony. Paying alimony is the least you can do. Kristen, I'm truly sorry for what our fool of a son has done. We are really sorry. We will make sure he takes responsibility. The in-laws joined in the apologies. It was reassuring to see that they were reasonable people. It would have been unbearable if they had sided with Tyler. But Tyler's apology was not enough. Determined to pursue my next course of revenge, I spoke up. Please, look up. There's no need for you two to apologize. More importantly, don't be deceived. What Tyler has done isn't just what you've seen. Not just this? What else has he done? The in-laws looked confused again. The mother-in-law seemed both angry and flabbergasted by her son's actions. In the midst of this tense atmosphere, I abruptly left the hospital room. Now, the real performance begins. 5 minutes later, Tyler was astounded. I returned to the room with a woman in tow. For Tyler, my bringing this woman was unexpected. Let me introduce you. This is Mia, Tyler's mistress. What? Not only did he mistreat his wife, but he was also unfaithful? Tyler. What is the meaning of this? How much more can you disappoint us? The in-laws were unable to hide their shock and began to interrogate Tyler. He was visibly distraught and denied knowing the mistress. What are you talking about? I don't know this woman. Is this some kind of misunderstanding, Kristen? Did you really think I knew nothing? You're quite naive. I asked with a cold tone, and he trembled slightly, looking down. I had anticipated that he would not immediately admit to the affair. Without hesitation, I played another video on the tablet. No, stop that. The video showed Tyler and Mia engaging in an affair inside his car. This was recorded by a camera I had installed in his car. Faced with this conclusive evidence, Tyler frantically tried to stop the video. But being paralyzed, he couldn't snatch the tablet from me. I had surveillance cameras not just in our house, but also in your car. You've gone too far. I had to do this much, otherwise, you would keep getting away with things, wouldn't you? And this isn't the only video. It seems you've used the car quite often for your escapades. Thanks for the substantial evidence. I had sensed signs of an affair as I monitored the cameras at home, leading me to suspect that his mistreatment stemmed from his infidelity. So I had also placed cameras in the car. With this, Tyler's affair was confirmed. And I began collecting evidence seriously, which led us to today. I have more than enough evidence in my hands. With Tyler unable to speak out in his defense, I continued to expose more truths to his parents. The reason Mia could come here so quickly is that she's hospitalized in the next room. Tyler said he had an accident during a business trip, but it was a complete lie. It was actually an accident during a trip he took with his mistress. Fortunately for her, she only sustained minor injuries. While Tyler ended up paralyzed, Mia was unscathed. Knowing that I was aware of everything, Tyler remained silent. An affair trip? So, this entire situation is his own doing. He's reaping what he sowed. It's punishment for his actions. The in-laws' anger reached its peak. The mother-in-law's fists were trembling with rage. I then made it clear to Tyler. In regards to our divorce, I'll be claiming alimony and property division. Of course, I don't need your consent to demand it. Tyler remained silent, but all he could do was acknowledge his guilt and apologize. Otherwise, his wounds would only deepen. Though I looked at silent Tyler with pity, he unexpectedly lashed out in a fit of rage. Up until then, he had been silent, but suddenly, he became defiant and started berating me. much. Fine. If you want to separate that badly, we'll get divorced. After all, I only married you to be a housekeeper. Telling me that now doesn't bother me at all? Besides, I've already filed for divorce, so we are strangers now. Is that so? Good riddance then. I was planning to dump you once you became unnecessary. Mia showed up, and you became obsolete. I'll pay the alimony and property division, so just disappear. Fine. I'll be leaving then. Make sure of your payment. No longer needing to play the good husband, Tyler hurled insults one after another. Despite being ridiculed by him, my expression remained unchanged as I left the hospital room. However, inside, I felt a sense of relief that it was finally over. And the clouds of frustration towards him had somewhat cleared. As I walked away lightly from the room, someone called out to me. Wait. Kristen. Even without turning around, I recognized it was the mother-in-law. Mother, you don't need to chase after me. I'm fine. It's not just about Tyler. I slapped you earlier without knowing everything. I'm really sorry. Please accept my apology. The mother-in-law knelt down and apologized. Please, get up. There's no need for that, especially in front of others. But I'm truly grateful that you and father-in-law took my side instead of Tyler's. Thank you for that. It's only natural. To think he was such a horrible person. I feel so ashamed as a parent. Kristen. I am truly sorry. As she spoke, the mother-in-law, with tears streaming down her face, hugged me. I wonder where we went wrong in raising him. We will make sure he pays the money and will persuade him to properly apologize to you, Kristen. I promise. For starters, I'm going back to the hospital room to slap him a few times. Her anger didn't seem to have subsided at all. The in-laws promised they would persuade their son to apologize, but I responded. Thank you. But please, rest assured. There's no need for you both to go out of your way. What do you mean? Do you have a good way to discipline him? Yes. Just wait and see. Indeed, my husband will be cornered in the future without me having to do anything. I know everything, as I've said many times before. A few days later, I was waiting for a phone call at my new home. I had missed calls and emails from Tyler multiple times, but I also had my own schedule. I had set a date and time when I could take a call from him. When the appointed time came, he called. He was panicked and disheveled, barely making sense. Calm down. What happened? That's what I'm trying to tell you. Mia ran off with my money. I can't reach her no matter how many times I call, and I don't know where she went. With my condition, I can't even go out to look for her. What am I supposed to do now? I see. What kind of response is that? Do you know something? In response to his frantic questions, I told him the truth. Actually, I knew this would happen. In fact, I had spoken with Mia a few months ago. At that time, she thought Tyler was single, because he had told her he was. She was very surprised to find out he was married. From her reactions, it was clear that Mia was not lying. And you know, Mia said something back then. She called you just a cash cow. That can't be true, right? Mia had intended to use Tyler and discard him, just as he had planned to do with me. Knowing Mia's scheme, I asked her to cooperate. I asked her to pretend to be unaware of anything and date him until my revenge was complete. Mia agreed, and Tyler, unaware of her scheme, believed they were really in a relationship. This means that by the time of the incident at the hospital, she was already fully aware of the situation. What? You must be joking. Sneaking around and deceiving me. Is that what a wife does? What are you talking about? You were the one who tried to discard me first, right? What goes around comes around. If you use people and throw them away, you can't complain when the same is done to you. This time, he had nothing to say back. There was no way he could. Always thinking about himself. Does he want to say that a wife is inferior to her husband? How blind can he be? How much does he need to hurt others before he's satisfied? If he doesn't change his ways, his life is over. But that's no longer my concern. My only wish is for him to fall into his own hell. We're done here, right? I'm going to hang up now. Just as I was moving the smartphone away from my face, I heard his voice from the depths of the phone. Wait. What now? Is there something else? I've realized. I need you. Please, give me another chance. To be speechless might be an understatement. How did he come to think this way? To think that he would ask for reconciliation at this point. What are you talking about? Don't say such foolish things. How could your thinking even go there? And here, I revealed another hidden truth to deliver the final blow. I know. You've already been fired from your job. What are you talking about? He wouldn't admit it right away, but it was the truth. Pretending otherwise was futile. There's no turning back now. While I was dismayed at his foolishness, I continued. You talked about being harassed by your boss and colleagues in the hospital room before. But that was all a lie, wasn't it? I heard you were the one pushing work and mistakes onto others. Why, how did you? I called your company to confirm you were on a trip with your mistress. That's when they told me you were causing problems there. As a result, my husband was fired. Always lying and deceiving people. He's truly hopeless. The only reason you're pushing for reconciliation is for money. You can't work properly with your current condition, so you're trying to make me work for you, right? I see right through you. No. I really realized your importance. Despite his ongoing lies, I completely dismissed his flawed reasoning. You used me like a tool and discarded me when I was no longer needed. You lied to suit your own needs and deceived me and your own parents. I will never forgive that. It seemed my utter contempt for him had finally gotten through. At last, he spoke words of regret and apologized. I'm sorry. I've been taking you for granted all this time. Ultimately, I thought you would forgive me. Though we couldn't see each other's faces over the phone. The tone of his voice conveyed that for once, his apology was heartfelt. You finally apologized. But I will never forgive you. Live your life alone and lonely. With those words, I pushed him away and hung up the phone. It's insane that some people never understand others' pain until they experience it themselves. But I was insane, too. I married him without realizing his true nature, became terrified, and complied with his demands. Even though I had allies in the in-laws close by, I never sought their help. I had regrets and reflections of my own, but now everything was finally over. I let out a sigh of relief. Later, I heard that Tylen had also sought help from his parents. However, since I had already informed them of everything beforehand, they were even more furious with him than before. By pushing him away, his parents left him without any allies, and he hit rock bottom. Meanwhile, Mia had found another mark to swindle. It seems people don't change that easily. However, it turned out that Mia picked the wrong person this time. And ended up being cornered herself. I hope this painful experience brings her some sense of remorse. Later, the in-laws came to apologize to me again. Kristen, we are truly sorry for everything that happened. We know it's not something that can be forgiven just by apologizing, but we are sincerely sorry. They expressed their apologies even more profoundly than Tyler. But I held no grudge against the in-laws. As I've said before, there's no need for you both to apologize. I am truly grateful to you. Kristen, we will always be on your side. Please don't hesitate to contact us if you need anything. The in-laws smiled kindly. Seeing their smiles, I felt warmth in my heart unexpectedly. Oh, Kristen, it's been a while since I've seen your smile. I had become unable to express my emotions, but unconsciously, I had smiled. My future is bright. With this realization, I cherished my current happiness. Even though I was pressured by Scott and his mother, I had difficulty conceiving. One day when I returned home, I found Scott, just back from a business trip, with Kelly holding twins in our house. Look. I gave birth to twins. Congratulations. I responded formally, and then Kelly made a shocking statement. Scott is the father. What? Both of them had a malicious smile on their faces. Sorry, you're just a barren defect. So, you're useless to us now. I'm going to remarry her, so let's get divorced. As Scott and Kelly left, I stood there in shock, then the phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. I heard that divorced Kelly returned to her hometown, so I set her up with Scott. She got pregnant right away, truly a model daughter-in-law. She chuckled. Did you encourage them? Yes, I did. Even after the call ended, I held onto my phone, fuming. Scott, Kelly, and my mother-in-law. I will make them regret what they've done to me. Be prepared. My name is Anna, a 42-year-old housewife. Scott and I married 3 years ago after meeting at a friend's wedding. He had a fresh and clean presence with a bright smile that I found appealing. Scott seemed interested in me too, and after the wedding reception, he suggested we start dating. Our relationship, intended for marriage, began, and 2 years later, we were married. My mother-in-law was warmly welcoming at the introduction, but clung to Scott and sobbed at the wedding. Guests chuckled at her clinginess, typical of a mother of an only child, I thought. And I was relaxed about getting along with Scott. I could never have imagined what the future held. Scott, who cared so much for me during the relationship, suddenly changed as soon as he got married. That doesn't mean he has become an abusive man. He began to give me orders and try to get me to obey him. Anna is precious to me. I want to protect Anna from other men. With that excuse, Scott began to overly interfere and dominate me. The first issues were about my clothes and makeup. Scott frowned uncomfortably when he saw me about to go shopping in a sleeveless dress. Do you want to be approached by other men? What? Confused by his question, Scott added. You're exposing too much skin. It's indecent. You should wear something appropriate for a married woman. I didn't understand what was indecent about a knee-length dress, but asked anyway. Then, Scott, what do you think I should wear? Scott then pulled a character pattern sweatsuit from the closet and handed it to me. Anna, you really don't have any proper clothes, do you? These are the only pants you have other than pajamas. What? Are all skirts bad? Of course. What if they blow up in the wind? There are lots of weird people out there. You need to be more careful. Lectured seriously, I felt discouraged. It might just be a matter of differing values. I couldn't bring myself to go out in home clothes, so I postponed the shopping. The next day, a bunch of plain sweatsuits arrived addressed to me. Yeah. This is about right. You're married to me, you don't need to dress up outside. Scott said it cheerfully, but I protested. Then where should I wear all the outdoor clothes that are overflowing in the closet? Wear them at home. You don't need to show them to anyone else. Actually, you don't need makeup either, right? Sunscreen is enough. Scott smiled. Maybe you should stop going to the hairdresser? If you really need to, I can cut your hair. I was horrified. Is this man sane? But, I'm paying for makeup and haircutting with my salary. It's a bit much to say that. Timidly making my case, Scott thought for a moment and then decided. All right, I'll allow makeup and hairdressing. But from now on, you'll go out dressed as I say. You're my wife, after all. Understood. Although I agreed, it was impossible to go downtown dressed like I was cleaning. Reluctantly, I resorted to changing into a dress in the station's restroom to go shopping or meet friends. Scott allowed me to go to the hairdresser, but he complained about my hairstyle. Since you're my wife, I want you to stop having hairstyles that appeal to men. Worn down by his persistent comments, I changed my brightly dyed brown hair to black with gray coverage. I also cut my long, permed hair and changed it to a short bob. Anna, you look different. People I bumped into were surprised, but explaining in detail was too troublesome. So I just smiled vaguely to gloss it over. Honestly, I didn't like being dictated to by my husband about everything. But hearing, Anna is my wife, I don't want her to stand out too much. And it worries me that other men might show interest in her, made it hard to complain. Ultimately, I convinced myself it was all done out of love and had no choice but to comply. Moreover, Scott didn't look too happy when I met up with friends. Every time, I had to report who I was going with, what time I would return, and even send a photo as proof to Scott's phone. If men were present at the dinner, even if they were friends' husbands, Scott would sulk every time. When I did attend, Scott would always come to pick me up. I'll head straight home once it's over, I'd tell him, but he was afraid I'd get too close to other men. I wasn't trusted. Your husband really treasures you. It's because you're newlyweds. I tired of brushing off these half-joking comments with a wry smile. Despite this, Scott justified his weekly outings as work-related, drinking every weekend. When I pointed this out, unable to agree, Scott pursed his lips. It's not like I want to go, it's just social obligations. If I cut back on these, it could affect my job and lead to a salary cut. Don't you understand? He half laughed as he said. If my salary decreases, it'll be tough for you too, right? Since you earn less than I do. I was frustrated, but as it was true, I couldn't argue back. The members are my bosses and subordinates, so I can't take photos. But don't worry, I'm not doing anything shady. So asserted, I found myself unable to complain. Scott was rarely at home, claiming overtime on weekdays and social drinking on weekends. Yet he was eager for children. But it wasn't out of a love for children, it was for his mother, who wanted grandchildren. I want to let mom hold her grandchild while she's still healthy. A boy would be ideal, but a girl would be fine for starters. He casually dropped such presumptuous lines. Oh, it didn't work out this month either? I really want to fulfill mom's wish soon. I also want to have a child soon. Scott patted my shoulder as if to console me. Well, I'm counting on you then. I'm looking forward to it. His detached attitude was exasperating. Did he think I could make a baby on my own? As our second year of marriage approached without any sign of pregnancy, I began to suspect natural conception might be difficult. I had been monitoring my menstrual cycle and basal body temperature, and was careful with my diet. Hearing that being cold was bad for pregnancy, I took warm half baths for over 30 minutes. And warmed my body with ginger and herbal teas. I did everything I could. However, Scott seemed uninterested when I talked about such efforts and lived carefreely. Cut back on smoking and drinking, I'd repeatedly tell him. but he seemed to have no intention of complying. Furthermore, even after I suggested having intercourse 2 days before ovulation for better chances of pregnancy, he would schedule fishing trips or drinking sessions instead. I started to doubt his sincerity about wanting children. Meanwhile, it was clear that his mother was eager for grandchildren. My in-laws' house, where we frequently visited during holidays upon her invitations, was an hour's drive away. She seemed to prefer including me, although calling Scott alone would suffice. My father-in-law, retired but busy with golf and volunteering, was often absent, leaving me to socialize with my stay-at-home mother-in-law. Her hobby was gossiping about the neighbors, and she often dragged me into conversations about grandchildren, pressuring, "Hurry up and have one. Listen, Anna. Mrs. Simpson keeps bragging about her third grandchild. Such a nasty character, right?
Yeah.
And Mrs. Holmes, she's got a second son now. Plus, her son lives with her. So considerate, don't you think?" Yes. She wanted to live with us at my in-laws' house. But Scott had refused before we married due to the distance from his work, which displeased her. So, she seemed to say, "At least give me a grandchild to satisfy me." This topic went on endlessly, and I wished Scott would deal with it. But whenever we visited, he would immediately go out with friends. Scott is always working hard, he wants to see his friends too. Of course, she defended Scott, but being left at my in-laws put a lot of stress on me. The meals were prepared by my mother-in-law, and I took care of the cleanup. There were no mean comments or sarcasm, just rush to say, "I want my grandson as soon as possible." 2 years into marriage and still no child? When will I be able to hold my grandchild? Hey? You're not doing this to spite me, are you? I finally snapped back sharply after being nagged repeatedly. No, that's not it. Really? But at this rate, I'm worried I won't meet them while I'm still alive. Right, Scott? As Scott played with his phone, he chuckled and replied, "Oh, come on, Mom. Anna is trying hard, right? So why does he act like it's none of his business?" As these interactions between Scott and his mother continued, my frustration grew. However, entering our 3rd year of marriage, Scott suddenly stopped talking about children. At the same time, his weekend work and business trips increased unexpectedly. Scott used to occasionally invite me for nights out on weekends. But suddenly, those invites stopped. Even when I tentatively suggested it, he curtly declined with, "I'm busy, maybe next time." His mother acted similarly. When I showed up at my in-laws' house, which used to be filled with incessant talks about other people's grandchildren, everything changed. She didn't mention them at all, as if she had become a different person. One day, I arrived at my in-laws' house earlier than planned. As usual, I parked my car in a nearby coin-operated parking lot and walked to their house. Scott said he would come later after finishing some errands, so I was there alone. Then, I saw a woman in a relaxed dress talking amiably with my mother-in-law at the entrance. I was so happy to hear that divorced Kelly came back to her hometown. "We'll be counting on you from now on. Likewise, please take care of me." Our eyes met, and my mother-in-law's cheeks stiffened suddenly. Kelly, looking back at me with a curious glance, smiled meaningfully and greeted me. "Nice to meet you. I'm Kelly Baker, living nearby." "Hello." Kelly scrupulously looked me over from head to toe and smirked. "Thank you for today, Kelly. We'll see you again soon." Despite seeming in the middle of their conversation, my mother-in-law hurriedly ended it and sent Kelly away. After taking me inside, my mother-in-law was cheerfully brewing coffee but seemed distracted. Eventually, Scott joined us, and my mother-in-law took him to another room for a private talk. When he returned, Scott was all smiles, which was odd for the entire day. I met Kelly again 6 months later. She showed up at the apartment where Scott and I lived, carrying newly born twins. Scott, who had been away on a business trip for 2 days, was already home when I returned from work. And for some reason, Kelly was with him. Look. I gave birth to twins. Congratulations. While Kelly enthusiastically showed off the babies, I responded formally and then asked Scott, "Welcome back. By the way, why is Ms. Baker here?" Before Scott could answer, Kelly responded, "Actually, I'm Scott's ex-girlfriend." "Oh, is that so?" My nonchalant response seemed to irritate Kelly. "Don't you get it? Are you stupid?" "What?" Then Kelly dropped a bombshell. "The twins' father is Scott." "What?" Unable to comprehend the situation, I stood dumbfounded as Scott wrapped his arm around Kelly's waist and pressed his cheek against hers. "I should have married you back then. I was shocked by our breakup and made a wrong choice. We can start over now. I'm favored by your mother and will definitely get along well." Scott smiled happily at a confident Kelly. Mom has always liked Kelly. She was thrilled when we got back together. Plus, she got pregnant right away, with boys too. Mom praised her, saying, "Well done. Right?" Unlike someone. The two shared a cruel laugh and then looked at me with malicious grins. "Sorry, you're just a barren defect. So, you're useless to us now. I'm tired of you always doing as I say. I'm going to remarry her, so let's divorce." Dumbfounded, I stood there as Scott told me, "I'm kind enough to give you a week. Find a new place and move out by then. Here, sign this divorce paper and submit it to the city hall." Scott left the divorce papers on the dining table and left the house with Kelly. Their laughter echoed down the apartment corridor. Was I just discarded? The control Scott had over me wasn't love, it was merely his desire to dominate. As I gazed at the divorce papers and stood there dazed, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. "If you interfere with those two, I won't forgive you." She spoke harshly, intimidating me. "I never liked you from the start. I always wondered why Scott chose such a plain woman." "Sorry for being plain." I apologized sarcastically. "I thought I'd acknowledge you as a daughter-in-law if you gave birth to a grandchild. But you're utterly useless. You're brainless." She spat out her words venomously. I told Scott that Kelly had come back home. Those two got back together right away. They're really a perfect match. I wonder why they ever broke up. "Did you instigate the affair?" I asked in shock, and my mother-in-law casually admitted it without a hint of shame. "Yes, that's right. I wanted Kelly to be my daughter-in-law. Getting pregnant so quickly, she's truly the ideal bride." She sounded utterly pleased with herself. "So it's all my fault for not getting pregnant?" "Of course. There's no point in having a daughter-in-law who can't bear children. If that's the case, it's better to replace her with another woman." She stated this outrageous philosophy as if it were nothing. "So just sign the divorce papers and disappear quickly." After a tirade, my mother-in-law hung up the phone. I continued to grip my phone for a while after the call ended, dizzy with anger, frustration, and a sense of humiliation. What do these people think of me? I can't let this go, the indignation is eating me up inside. Clenching my back teeth, I swore revenge. Scott, his mother, and Kelly. I will make sure they deeply regret causing me such pain. They should be prepared. "Hey, haven't you moved out yet?" "It's been well over a week." Scott kept calling and messaging daily, but I used my busy schedule as an excuse to drag things out. Even after submitting the divorce papers, there were plenty of things to do. A week later, when I was ready, I summoned Scott, Kelly, and my mother-in-law to the apartment. All three showed up with sour expressions. Kelly wants to live in the apartment I've been in rather than a new one. So we've decided on this place. Get out already. It's not right to keep imposing on my parents-in-law forever. Since you've filed for divorce, move on. It seems like you're still hung up on Scott, but he belongs to Kelly now. As the three of them started making a scene at the dining table, I calmly addressed them. Scott and Kelly sat together, with my mother-in-law across from them. I served coffee for everyone and sat next to my mother-in-law, speaking sharply. I have no lingering feelings for this man. A man who lies, controls his wife, and has children with an affair partner is the last thing I want. Perhaps my words struck a chord because Scott looked visibly uncomfortable. Anyway, as long as you're squatting here, we can't move in. Oh, did you forget? My parents paid the down payment and half of the purchase price for this room. Did they? Scott blinked in confusion. It's incredible how he forgets things that don't suit him. Despite bragging about his high salary at a big company. It's not much to boast about, I thought with a snort. We split the rest between us. Since my parents and I contributed more, I put it in my name. So, it's my apartment. Kelly and my mother-in-law were shocked. Scott, that's not what you told me. Scott, well, fine. Keep the place. Kelly, let's find another apartment. Scott tried to sound magnanimous, but Kelly pouted. I was looking forward to spending time in Scott's study. Fine, I'll ask Dad to buy us a high-rise condo. It's only because of Scott's earnings that you could live here. And now you're boasting like that? What a wicked daughter-in-law. I knew it. So, are we done here? To her discontented grumble, I smiled confidently. No, the main topic is just about to begin. The main topic? I called you here because I've gathered evidence to report. I pulled out an investigation report. And about 10 photos from a large envelope and laid them on the dining table. At this, Scott and Kelly's faces turned pale, and they started to panic. They scrambled to collect the photos and hid them in their pockets and bags, prompting an annoyed reaction from my mother-in-law. What was that? I couldn't see. Don't worry. There are plenty more images I haven't printed yet. I then showed the images on my phone, sliding through them as my mother-in-law watched. Scott and Kelly screamed and tried to snatch the phone, but I swatted their hands away. As my mother-in-law peered into the phone screen, her face changed color. You too. You have other partners too? Their disturbance was natural. The screen displayed images of Kelly and Scott each arm in arm with different partners, entering and leaving hotels. Come on, Mom. Don't believe that. Anna must have fabricated them. Yes, that's right. She looks timid but is cunning. As they scrambled to make excuses, I countered. A novice like me couldn't possibly take such good evidence photos. I hired a detective agency to investigate the infidelity. So these are definitely genuine. If you doubt it, why not call the agency yourself? I handed out the detective agency's business card, and Scott and Kelly fell silent, their faces sour. Eventually, unable to bear the silence, Scott confessed. Yeah. That's right. I've been seeing other people besides Kelly. It's my money I'm spending, I can do what I want with it. Got a problem with that? Other men won't leave me alone. I can't help it. Wait, Scott, you said I was the only one. You big liar. Kelly, burning with anger, and Scott, equally aggressive. You too. Saying, I can finally be with Scott, it's like a dream. Are any men fine for you? Enough. She scolded them both. Holding her forehead, she lamented in a dismayed tone. I'm disappointed in both of you. After all the arrangements I made, this is a letdown. Seeing my mother-in-law's disappointment, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Shaking my shoulders as Scott, Kelly, and my mother-in-law stared at me puzzled. Sorry, it's just funny seeing mother pretending to be a reasonable person. I'm sure you'll be cheated on. Because you don't support Shinya as a daughter-in-law. My mother-in-law, this time, turned her attention to me. She continues to nag and make sarcastic remarks as usual. If you had properly devoted yourself to Scott and had children, he wouldn't have strayed to Kelly. In the end, it's all your fault. Despite her own role in orchestrating their affair, she had the audacity to say such things. As I stood speechless, Scott and Kelly jumped on the bandwagon, shouting in chorus. That's right. It's all Anna's fault. If you can't satisfy your husband or have children, it's only natural he'd lose interest. Poor Scott.
Yeah.
By the way, Mother, you're quite active yourself, aren't you? When I spread a different set of photos across the table, my mother-in-law gasped, speechless. Scott and Kelly, peering directly at the photos, let out absurd exclamations. Hey, seriously? Is that Mom's guy? Eek, a lover from overseas? Mother, not bad. Scott and Kelly were astonished, and I just smiled. There's also audio from the date. Wow, I want to hear it. It's not something shady, is it? It seems like a detective agency recorded it at a cafe. Ignoring the flustered mother-in-law, I played the voice recorder. Francois, I'll have the money ready soon, just wait. Her upbeat tone was evident in her voice. The parent of Scott's new partner is wealthy. So I'll just flatter the daughter-in-law and get them to cough up the money. Kelly is simple, so it's easy. Thank you, I appreciate it. I'm glad, now my sister can have her surgery. I love you. My mother-in-law happily responded to his broken English. It's okay, about $30,000. I love you too. Scott and Kelly's eyes widened as they stared at my mother-in-law. Who is this Francois? Are you sure about his background? Don't make that face. It's fine. She laughed it off. He's an Italian working here. Met him on social media. He's poor and couldn't afford his sister's medical treatment for a rare disease, so I covered it. She spoke proudly, puffing out her chest. He said he prefers mature women with a nurturing spirit like me. I gave him $30,000 to start with, and he cried with joy. He's a good boy. Scott looked despairing as my mother-in-law seemed smitten. Where do I even begin? Francois is a French-sounding name. It must be all lies. Sounds like a scammer preying on women. Don't speak ill of Francois. Kelly, veins bulging in her temples, snapped back. So you were pushing us together just to give him money? Unbelievable, this old woman. Calm down, Kelly. Scott tried to soothe the infuriated Kelly. It's thanks to Mom that we got back together. I apologize, can't you forgive me? Scott. Scott patted a still discontent Kelly's head and smiled. I may have strayed to other women, but I still love you, Kelly. You also bore my children. Let's make up. Kelly softened at his words. You're right, I was wrong too. In the end, I love you the most, Scott. Let's keep getting along well. After gazing into each other's eyes for a moment, they both turned to face me. Are we done here? I need to go. We left the kids with the babysitter. We're busy taking care of the twins. You wouldn't understand, being dumped by Scott and all. I looked up at the wall clock. Just a moment longer. They should be arriving soon. Just as I spoke, the doorbell rang right on cue. I checked the intercom, saw the guests, and let them in. Scott, Kelly, and my mother-in-law looked puzzled at the two men who suddenly appeared. Dad? And who are you? Scott eyed the elderly man behind his father and asked. Forgotten already? He's the doctor I consulted for fertility testing, introduced by your father. Scott remembered, while Kelly showed panic. You were getting fertility tests? I didn't know about this. Didn't I mention it? Scott answered nonchalantly, while Kelly frowned. What brings you all the way here? Scott asked, puzzled, and I answered for the doctor. I went to speak to him directly, but you seemed too busy with Kelly and the twins. I explained the situation to your father and had him come here. Scott frowned at my explanation. The doctor met my gaze, I nodded, and he sighed softly before breaking the news. Actually, Scott, you have male infertility. There was a moment of icy silence, then Scott and his mother exclaimed in unison. What? Huh? While we all looked on, the doctor furrowed his brow and continued reluctantly. Anna has no issues. Scott, you have a very low sperm count. It's impossible for you to father children with such a condition. The doctor laid out the test results on the dining table, and Scott, Kelly, and my mother-in-law scrutinized them intently. Soon after, Scott and Kelly screamed. Me? No way, that's a lie. Give me a break. This is totally unexpected. They were completely panicked. Kelly, tearing at her hair and screaming in a shrill voice, exclaimed. I never thought you'd be infertile. Our plans are completely ruined now. What are we going to do? Plans? I got back with you because an employee at a major corporation had better prospects than a good-looking freelancer who claims to be a model. And now this? I've been deceived. In her agitated state, Kelly blurted out more than anyone asked for. Hearing this, Scott's expression turned demonic. Hey. I forgave your cheating, which caused our initial breakup. And now you've done the same thing again? I believed we could really start over this time. Scott clenched his fists, his voice low and growling with anger as he confronted Kelly. Huh? As if you have any right to blame me. You cheated with other women yourself. That was just for fun. It's completely different from what you did, you actually had kids. Amid such a low-level quarrel, I, my father-in-law, and the doctor were dumbfounded. We had no intention of intervening and silently watched the unfolding drama. I cut off the other guys and chose you to be the father. You should be thanking me instead of complaining. So, it wasn't my fault we couldn't have children, it was Scott who was infertile. Kelly, the defective barren one isn't me, it's Scott. I jumped into the conversation as Scott and Kelly looked at me resentfully. Undeterred, I quoted what Kelly and my mother-in-law had previously said to me. Remember what you told me, mother? A wife who can't have children is worthless. So, a husband who can't father children must be worthless too, right? I smiled triumphantly at my mother-in-law, who bit her lip in frustration and glared back. Expecting more harsh words from her, instead, my mother-in-law turned to Scott and Kelly, unleashing a thunderous scolding. I believed they were Scott's children. Unforgivable. This hussy. And Scott, you fell for such a wicked woman. Get a divorce right now. I don't need you to tell me that. I'm getting a divorce anyway. And don't you dare order me around when you've been cheating yourself, you old hag. Amid the ensuing chaos, my father-in-law sighed deeply. He walked over to me and apologized. I'm sorry my wife and son have caused such trouble. When I hired someone to investigate, it turned out she was cheating with a man who was involved with other women too. It took time to gather the evidence. Looking exhausted, he addressed Scott, my mother-in-law, and Kelly. Let's go home. We'll discuss the rest there. He calmed the nearly brawling trio with the help of the doctor and ushered them into the car, heading back to their family home. The day after I filed for divorce, Scott and Kelly, who had just remarried, ended up facing another divorce within a week. Both were heard complaining to friends and acquaintances. I never want to see that person's face or hear their voice again. While Scott and my mother-in-law ignored the advice from relatives, my mother-in-law finally listened when it was revealed she had been deceived by a scammer. She tried frantically to recover the money she had spent, but the scammer, already pursued by the police, had disappeared. After finding out she had used his retirement savings without permission, Scott's father served her with divorce papers. She cried and resisted but eventually gave in. It also came to light that she had accumulated debts in Scott's name, leading to a massive argument, with Scott's father and Scott moving out of the family home. My mother-in-law was left to live alone in their large house. After divorcing Kelly and moving into an apartment, Scott paid a lump sum of compensation into my account and continued his work as if nothing had happened. However, his past resurfaced when a local acquaintance joined his company and spilled the beans. The story of his remarriage to his ex-girlfriend and their quick divorce reached his superiors, who questioned his character. Relegated to a lesser department, Scott saw his salary significantly reduced. As soon as he became financially unstable, his former lovers distanced themselves, and he faced desperate days trying to pay off the debts his mother had accumulated. After divorcing Scott, Kelly moved back to her parents' house, where she lived leisurely with her twins, relying on her wealthy parents to pay the compensation in one go. She told them, "I remarried Scott, but it didn't work out." However, after I sent a legal notice revealing Kelly's multiple affairs and uncertain paternity of her children, her parents were furious and kicked her out. Reluctantly, Kelly moved into a rundown apartment. Placing her twins in daycare, Kelly started working multiple jobs, tirelessly working day and night. Now free from anyone dictating my choice of clothes or hairstyle, I grew out my hair and dyed it my favorite color. I began shopping for cute clothes at my favorite stores and enjoyed meals with friends, relishing the happiness I had regained. My heart felt light and refreshed as I lived my days. Though my marriage had failed, I learned a valuable lesson about not being deceived by superficial kindness. Now, I plan to enjoy my work and personal life to the fullest, without worrying about anyone else's expectations.
In front of me was a scene I could hardly believe. The president's son was splashing beer on my grandson. My grandson had done nothing to harm anyone. On the contrary, he had been listening to and following the orders of the president's son. The son of the president, who splashed the beer, seemed truly delighted. Witnessing this situation, I felt an unprecedented level of anger rising within me. "Complain to me and you're fired." When I reproached him, he said that calmly. He was using his position as the president's son to threaten others. I couldn't remain silent after that. "Before that happens, you and your father will be fired." When I said that, he looked puzzled. But that was fine. By the time he understood what I meant, it would be too late. My name is John Hanson. I currently work as a janitor at an amusement park. This park is a place where I worked when I was young and is very dear to my heart. Various things happened, and I switched jobs once. But after retiring from the company I had been with, I started working as a temporary janitor. The amusement park is a dreamlike place where both adults and children can smile. I work here enjoying seeing the smiles of the visitors, and I clean the park every day. However, in recent years, the declining number of visitors has become a major issue. One of the biggest reasons for the decline in visitors is that the management changed 10 years ago. In any business, to satisfy customers, it is necessary to meet their needs. However, the current management does not understand what the visitors to the park want at all. As a result, they are heading in a direction that is contrary to the demanded needs. Originally, this amusement park was themed around retro, which offered an atmosphere like stepping back into the past, unique compared to other amusement parks. Adults reminisced about the old days, and children enjoyed an atmosphere they couldn't usually experience. However, lately, they have been incorporating modern attractions that completely destroy the retro concept, ruining the unique atmosphere. Most visitors leave dissatisfied. As sales have fallen year by year, the only option has been to cut labor costs, which in turn has led to a decline in service quality. This has accelerated customer departure, causing a vicious cycle where nothing seems to work out. The main person dragging the amusement park in the wrong direction is the president's son, Fred. Fred was a typical nepotism hire. Using his father's power fully, he became the vice president of the company shortly after joining. If he was genuinely trying to improve the amusement park, there might still be hope. But that's not the case with him. Currently, the president is too busy with other businesses to attend to the amusement park's operations, leaving it all to Fred. Fred enjoys having the freedom to do whatever he wants. Recently, due to the decrease in visitors and worsening management, meetings involving all employees are frequently held. However, no matter who suggests improvements to Fred, he refuses to listen. Fred, we are currently short-staffed, which has significantly reduced the quality of our service. If this continues, we will lose even more customers. Please consider taking some measures, trying to improve the situation. I actively speak up about improvement points and current problems at meetings. Most employees nod in agreement with what I say. However, Fred just sits there acting superior, ignoring everyone's opinions. Huh? Aren't you just some old janitor? Don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong. He mocks me with those words, and ultimately, the situation fails to improve. As time passes, it becomes spring. My grandson Nathan has just graduated from university. It was a surprise when he told me just before graduating that he had decided to work at the amusement park where I work. Nathan, won't you reconsider? You studied it at university, right? This isn't a place where you can utilize what you've learned. And more importantly, our company is currently in a tough situation. Thank you for your concern, but I'm fine. I've thought it through and made my decision. I opposed his joining the company and pleaded with him to reconsider numerous times. However, Nathan remained steadfast in his decision and eventually joined the company. I really want to help restore this amusement park that you love. Nathan fully understands how much I cherish the amusement park. That's why he wants to help fix it for my sake. Just a month after Nathan joined, the amusement park celebrated its 40th anniversary with a big party. The party, held at a luxury hotel, was attended by all the employees. Although I was just a temporary janitor, I was allowed to attend and sat at the very back. As it was a drinking occasion, many employees enjoyed their drinks and were moderately drunk. However, one person was behaving oddly. It was Fred. Fred, losing control at the party, seemed to be drinking heavily. His face was bright red and his eyes were glazed. "Hey, you, show us some talent." Pointing at the new employees, including Nathan, he demanded they perform on the spot. While many employees were confused by this unreasonable request, Nathan spoke up. "Yes, understood." In response, he started doing impersonations. Nathan is very serious by nature. Thus, trying to fulfill his boss's command, he did his best with the impersonations. However, the impromptu performance unfortunately did not resemble the intended subjects. "What is that? It's not even funny." Laughing at his earnest attempt, Fred approached him and poured beer over his head. Including me, those around were stunned by his sudden action. And Nathan, drenched in beer, was too shocked to move. He had been seriously following Fred's orders and doing his best. Yet, to have beer poured over him was just too cruel. I could still tolerate being verbally abused and ridiculed. But to see my grandson Nathan made a laughingstock and treated so horribly at such a celebratory event, even I have reached my limit. "What are you doing to my grandson?" I raised my voice like never before and protested to him. "Ha, this guy is your grandson, old man?" Even seeing me visibly angry, he showed no concern. Instead, he looked alternately at the still dazed Nathan and me, bursting out laughing while holding his stomach. "Hey, old man, if you complain to me, you and your grandson will both be fired, okay? Is that okay with you, even if your precious grandson becomes unemployed?" Leveraging his position as vice president, he threatened us instead of feeling any guilt for his actions. He thinks it's okay to do anything to us because we are lower in status than him. This outrageously unfair mindset made me feel even more furious from the bottom of my heart. "Huh? Isn't that Mr. Hansen?" Then I was approached from behind. Turning around, I saw Robert Owen, the president. "What's wrong, Mr. Hansen? You've become quite shabby." He had the same unpleasant smile as Fred. Like father, like son. They both share these disagreeable traits. "Huh, what? Dad, you know this janitor, old man?" "Yes, that's right. After all, he's the former president who I pushed out." "Seriously?" Fred laughed heartily upon discovering my true identity. "Yes, I am currently a temporary janitor But in fact, I was the president of this company until 10 years ago. I was overseas for work, but during that time, Robert, who was my right-hand man and executive, betrayed me. Betrayed by someone I trusted, I tasted the greatest despair of my life. Robert had always been a smooth talker. Using his eloquence, he quickly won over the executives during my overseas inspection and took over the management company. "We'll need you to leave the company." Realizing the situation, I was dumbfounded, and he told me I was fired, leaving me no choice but to resign. Of course, I was frustrated, but there was nothing I could do once things had come to this point. I gave up and quickly switched to another job. I worked there for several years and took early retirement. Even after changing jobs, I kept in touch only with trustworthy former subordinates. But one day, I was informed that the amusement park was in a precarious financial state. Unable to sit still, I searched for a way to work at the amusement park again, and started working as a temporary janitor in disguise. Fred joined the company after I had left. Because our working periods did not overlap, he did not know about me. Additionally, since Robert had been hands-off with the amusement park operations, my true identity had never been discovered until now. Nathan chose this amusement park as his place of employment because he knew I had been the president here. I have always loved this amusement park and often brought Nathan here to play. That's why he understood how much I cared about and valued the amusement park. Thus, he joined this company, wanting to help restore the amusement park for my sake. Hilarious. So you were the founder? But such people are an eyesore. So you guys are fired. After saying that, Fred waved his hand dismissively, trying to shoo us away. I glared at him fiercely. Before that, you and your father will be fired. I spoke to the Owen family in a voice colder than I had ever used in my life. Huh? Us fired? What are you talking about? He must have thought I had lost my mind. Fred was laughing. However, I was perfectly sane. You may not be aware, but I am the majority shareholder of this company, holding over 51% of the shares. As I said that, the expression on Robert, who had been laughing along with him, began to cloud over. In fact, I had been desperately thinking of ways to improve the situation. And somehow, I managed to arrange a meeting with the bank, the investor in the amusement park. I was worried that no one would listen to me since I was no longer the president. But it seemed the bank was also concerned about the performance that had been declining since my departure. Therefore, I begged the bank to transfer some of their shares to me. The percentage of shares one holds can make a difference in the authority one has. If you own more than half the shares, you can normally decide on important matters such as dismissing directors and determining the compensation of executives. With this, it would be possible to pull Robert and Fred down from their positions as president and vice president. The discussion with the bank went smoothly in the direction I hoped for, and I managed to have them transfer part of their shares to me. Thus, combining the shares I originally held, I successfully acquired 51%. At this point, no one has more power than I do. I currently hold 51% of the shares. You understand what that means, don't you, President Owen and Vice President Fred? As I asked the two of them, their previous bravado was nowhere to be seen. They looked paler than I had ever seen them before. No, that can't be true. He was barely able to utter a word. You understand, right, Robert? As I asked Robert with a smile, he shook his shoulders significantly, his expression fearful. He must be desperately thinking about how to get out of this situation in his mind. But at this point, I have no intention of forgiving them. There had been chances for them to change their hearts before. I had met Fred at meetings several times, and each time I conveyed the current state of the amusement park and strongly appealed for improvements. But it was Fred who had long dismissed the words of an old man like me as irrelevant. Even if he now admits he was wrong and apologizes to me, I have no intention of forgiving him. Given his high pride, as he had always mocked me as an old man, he would never lower his head to me. While calmly thinking such things in my head, I ignored the two of them and walked up to the stage. Everyone, for the revival of the amusement park. I will expel the Owen family and implement reforms. I declared loudly, raising my voice. Though everyone was surprised when I suddenly took the stage. When I made my declaration, the whole venue erupted. Honestly, with the management deteriorating to this extent, no one is enjoying the benefits. No matter how hard they work, their salaries do not increase. On the contrary, I've heard employees say that even the amount of their annual bonuses continues to decrease. In such an environment, how can anyone feel motivated about their work? The only ones satisfied with the current situation are those like Fred, who can act however they like. Upon hearing my declaration, the employees looked at me with shining eyes. It seems that many employees felt hopeful that the work environment was about to change. The supportive atmosphere among the employees was comforting to me. Seeing the response from the staff, if the environment is changed to be more conducive to work, they will surely work harder than ever. Thankfully, including Nathan, there are a reasonable number of young employees who, if nurtured, could become pillars supporting the company in the future. Once the Owen family is expelled, I am confident that things will move in a better direction. A few days later, an extraordinary shareholders meeting was held to decide on the treatment of the Owen family. Of course, as the leading shareholder, I participated. At this meeting, I exposed all the terrible management practices of the Owen family without omission. Fred indulged in his power and acted capriciously, ignoring the words of those around him. He repeatedly threatened anyone who opposed him with his power. I also presented data showing how his insistence on his own ideas led to financial distress. I believe I was able to explain this clearly to the executives. I pursued Robert for betraying me, unjustly ousting me from the company, and for his failure to manage properly by appointing his incapable son as vice president. The Owen family, not wanting to give up their positions, desperately tried to rebut my statements, but their arguments were weak, and no one believed what they said. After exposing all their misdeeds to the shareholders and the executives, I, as the leading shareholder, demanded their dismissal. The motion passed, and the dismissal resolution was approved. With Robert's dismissal, the position of president would become vacant. There, a resolution for me to return as president was also passed on the spot, and I returned to the presidency. I wasn't particularly attached to the position of president. However, the current situation of the amusement park is perilously unstable. Immediate action was necessary, and that would be difficult for anyone who didn't deeply understand the amusement park. That's why I was chosen. Since returning as president, I have been very busy with the reconstruction of the amusement park. Amidst the business, I was informed by my subordinates about what happened to the Owen family after their dismissal. Both father and son, originally very prideful, had become unemployed. They seemed desperate to find new jobs, but it wasn't going well. Robert is older, and it would be difficult for him to find a job with conditions similar to before. As for Fred, although he is still at an age where he could turn things around, his problematic personality. He doesn't listen to others and always wants to be on top. So it's unlikely he could work under someone else at this point. Furthermore, I heard that Fred was seen wandering around the drinking district every day, drowning himself in alcohol. This situation must have hit him hard, driving him to escape into alcohol. For a moment, I felt pity for him. But remembering all the verbal abuse and atrocious behavior he had directed at me, I could only see it as karma. Besides, I don't have time to spare a thought for the Owen family now. In pursuing reforms for the amusement park, I decided to review the ridiculous attraction expansion plans that they had been planning. Looking through the plans for attractions themed on outer space or pirates, which completely ignored the world view of the amusement park, I couldn't help but sigh. Our amusement park is prominently touted as a retro park. Yet why do they keep making plans that are so out of sync with the concept? The first thing I started was revising this unplanned and chaotic attraction expansion. Even if we add more attractions, if they're all out of sync with the concept, we can't satisfy the people who seek a retro experience. Believing that the revival of the amusement park would require a significant period, I made the bold decision to close the park for 6 months. While the park is closed, we won't generate revenues since we can't admit customers. However, we can use this limited time to create an amusement park that will attract many visitors again. Lend me your strength, Nathan. Leave it to me, Grandpa. In seeking assistance for the revival of the amusement park, not only did I turn to the bank, our financier, but my grandson Nathan was also one of those I asked for help. The exterior will be restored to its former retro style, while incorporating new elements to keep our longtime customers from getting bored. That's when I thought of using modern technologies, including VR. I lack knowledge in modern technologies. In contrast, My grandson Nathan has specialized knowledge in it from university and is very knowledgeable. I will lead the design efforts. I will leave the technical aspects to Nathan. Nathan and I, as the main figures, along with all the employees, work together to rebuild the amusement park. Previously, under Fred's control, there were only disinterested people. But now, freed from that, everyone has regained their motivation. Everyone actively shares ideas, and we incorporate good ones into our creations. Nothing was useful when talking to Fred, but it's different now. The current environment, where good ideas are adopted, seems to have inspired many employees. An amusement park is a place of dreams. I want those who work here to enjoy their jobs. Taking advice from the bank, the amusement park we all built together, although I say it myself, turned out very well. The appearance, fitting for the retro concept, stands out. Inside, we've sprinkled elements of the old era, creating an atmosphere where adults can reminisce about the old days. The attractions incorporating its technology, spearheaded by Nathan, are refreshing to experience and likely to be addictive for many. The 6-month period was busy and flew by in a blink. Looking back on the days spent fully committed to reforming the amusement park, it feels like it was a more substantial period than just 6 months. Right now, in front of me is the culmination of our efforts, created together by everyone. I felt deeply moved, and tears nearly came to my eyes. Grandpa, are you about to cry? The reopening is tomorrow. Save the tears for when you see the customers smiling. Right, yeah. I shouldn't cry in front of my grandson. I calmed myself and held back the tears. On the day of the reopening, we distributed flyers in the neighborhood and ran commercials within a limited area, which brought in many visitors. Many people were smiling at the amusement park. This was exactly the sight I wanted to see. As I walked around the park, paying attention to the customers' reactions, the expressions of those enjoying the attractions were much better than before the renewal. With this, the dwindling visitor numbers should gradually increase. Feeling the effectiveness of the renewal, I resolved to continue managing the park in a way that keeps entertaining our customers. Perhaps the ordeal with the Owen family made me feel this more profoundly than ever. It took over a decade to reach this point, but having seen the sight I wanted to see once more, I savored the fulfilling sense of contentment.